From HanselMinutes.com, it's Hansel Minutes, a weekly discussion with web developer and technologist Scott Hanselman. This is Lawrence Ryan announcing show number 227, recorded live Tuesday, August 10th, 2010. Support for Hansel Minutes is provided by Telerik R80 Controls, the most comprehensive suite of components for Windows Forms and ASP.NET web applications. Online at www.telerik.com. In this episode, Scott talks about Expression SuperPreview with developer Mike Calvo.
Hi, this is Scott Hanselman, and this is another episode of Hansel Minutes. Today I'm sitting down with Mike Calvo, Senior Development Lead at Microsoft, working on SuperPreview. And actually, Mike and I have a couple things in common, one of which is that we're both remote. So you're not in Redmond, are you?
No, I'm in St. Paul, Minnesota.
St. Paul, Minnesota, the hotbed of Microsoft development.
That's right. We've got a Twin Cities Development Center, about 30 developers out here in Minnesota, and we're building products for the Expression brand of Microsoft products.
I had no idea that we had people in Minnesota. So are you affected by the Microsoft reality distortion field that is hovering over Redmond, or?
We try not to, but occasionally it creeps in. But it's exciting to have a chance to work for Microsoft and not necessarily have to relocate across the country.
Yeah, definitely. I love it down here in Portland. Do you do communicator calls, or do you have like a telepresence wall of some kind?
A lot of communicator calls. We do a lot of roundtable, make use of a lot of roundtable technology, which has been great. And but yeah, I probably spend a good 4 or 5 hours out of my day on communicator.
Yeah, I actually have got a machine set up over here with kind of a persistent portal. Rather than keeping calls up and down all day, we just actually made a special account. And we just keep it on 8 hours a day, and that way someone can stop by the office and say, "Oh, there's Scott."
Nice idea. I'll have to try that one out myself.
Yeah, I mean, if you got the bandwidth to blow, right, just keep it on all the time, and then somebody can pop in. So then the trick is to go to like Costco and get somebody to sell you a 42-inch monitor, big one, like a big HD TV, right? Then you plug a little laptop into it with HDMI, and you have a giant portal into Minnesota.
Perfect idea.
Yeah, something to think about. So you're working on SuperPreview. Now, this is part of Expression. Now, most of the people who listen to the show are devs. They might use Expression Blend, but I think that
Sure.
Expression kind of tapers off the developer side and into the designer stuff pretty quickly.
Right.
So there's products they don't think about.
Sure. So Expression Web, or SuperPreview is actually a product that was originally came out as a companion product to Expression Web, which is our HTML authoring tool. And what SuperPreview does is it helps you to debug cross-browser problems. So it lets you look at your pages as they would render in the various popular browsers that are out there in the wild today.
Mm-hmm. And there seems to be two versions, right? I can get a free one that will give me IE 6, 7, and 8 all at the same time. Right?
That's right. That's right. We call that SuperPreview for IE, and as you stated, that lets you take a look at your page as it would look in all of the current versions of IE that are out in the world today. So IE 6, IE 7, and IE 8.
Mm-hmm.
That's a free offering that you can download from the Expression website. The full version of SuperPreview comes as part of the Expression Studio or the Expression Web product. That gives you the addition of Firefox browsers, as well as just recently released as part of Expression Studio 4, we now support Mac Safari.
Okay, so I've got MSDN license, right? So do MSDN people get this too?
That's right. With an MSDN license, you can download and install the full Expression Studio, which would, as you mentioned, come with Blend, but also comes with Expression Web and includes SuperPreview.
Okay, so I've opened up SuperPreview here, and I put in Hanselman.com. I've got IE 8 on the right-hand side. That's basically my screen is split into two panes, and this is kind of nice because I've got a 30-inch monitor. So I've actually got the entire page being shown there. It looks like the bigger the monitor, the better with SuperPreview. And interestingly, the whole screen on the edges is rulers, big pixel rulers that go around all three of the four edges around. And then I'm going to click IE6, and then really quickly, I think it was like 2 seconds, 3 seconds, I'm looking at a slightly different rendering of my of my site on the left, and it's somehow crappier because it's IE6. And I used this just a couple of days ago to figure out that I had some PNG transparency problems, actually, with IE6. And as I hover over these, oh, wow, I've got another problem now. So this is interesting. Looks like I've got an issue where my right rail of my blog is being pushed out of the way. And as I hover around on the different elements, they highlight. So this is really interesting. So, for example, if I hover over the title on the left side, I've got IE6. It highlights, and then it shows me where that highlight would be on the other side. But if I roll over on the newer browser, it shows me where it would be on the other one. So it really is tracking somehow live between the two instances. What's going on here? That's
right. We understood that the way people debug cross-browser problems is to basically look at elements and look at debug things kind of top to bottom. So once you kind of discover where things have started to go awry, you typically can begin that debugging process. And so what we do is actually pull the DOM information out of the browser so that we understand what's the information that the browser is using to render the page. And then what we do is try to align the DOM elements between the browsers so that we can help somebody diagnose where that problem can begin. So, as you mentioned, when you click on an element in one of the renderings, it will highlight it, and then what it'll do is attempt to find the same element in the other DOM, basically by using its position in the hierarchy, and highlight that element. In addition, it will show you an outline of the same region that is on the left side. It'll show you that highlighted so that you can see the difference between where the actual element is and where it is in the other browser. So it really gives you a nice way to see the differences between the two browsers on an element-by-element basis.
Yeah, when I had my PNG problem, it turns out that my header was a PNG that was transparent. And I had no idea that on IE6 it was coming out kind of like gray. The transparency wasn't working. And I wasn't sure if it was in the background element, in the image itself, if it was the background image on the header. So I hovered around until I found out that it was in fact the main image, and then I put in the IE6 PNG transparency fix, and then just went into Super Preview and then hit refresh all, and then it looked fine, and I knew that I looked okay in IE6. So for stuff like that, I mean, for fixing IE6 problems, it's really the only game in town for me. But I was thinking there's a couple of different ways I could have done this because I'm using Windows 7. I could have maybe brought up a VM because I've got Windows XP mode.
Sure.
I mean, there's really three things that you could do, right? You could use a screenshot service, like online, browser shots or whatever. Go online and they would give me a picture of how it looks. I could use a virtual machine. Or I could use something like Super Preview. So why wouldn't I want to just fire up virtual machines with copies of XP with IE6 and IE7 and IE8, and then I don't have to pay for Super Preview?
Well, that's right, and certainly using VMs is something that we all do, almost on a daily basis to figure out those different version problems. So that you can certainly do. I think what Super Preview provides is what you saw and talked about in terms of being able to highlight the elements, being able to see the browser images side by side, and to be able to actually compare at a pixel perfect positioning where each element exists is something that, and in addition, the responsiveness that you talked about, how quickly we're able to render the images and show you that response. When you're debugging something, the ability to make a change and quickly see how that change has impacted your web design is really important. And so these are the values that Super Preview brings, is that you can go quickly, make a change, refresh Super Preview, and see instantly how that change is reflected both in your original browser, whether it be IE7 or IE8, and then in the comparison browser, IE6 in this case. So it's really about improving performance and being able to more quickly identify and then fix cross-browser problems. That really makes it an advantage over the VM model or the snapshot services, which typically don't provide you that DOM analysis and the pixel-level positioning of the elements.
Yeah, I noticed that I can pull, just like in Photoshop, I can pull away from the ruler, and I can pull out left and right guides.
Right.
And they'll actually track both browsers. So I'm pulling out a guide for one browser, and there's an identical mirrored guide on the other side.
That's right. That's a tool that is familiar to a lot of folks that do web design and development.
Yeah. Well, actually, and speaking of design, one of the things that was surprising to me was if I close the left side here, and I have a choice, it says IE 6, 7, 8 in compatibility mode, 8 regular, Firefox, and I have 3.6.8. It says Safari Mac, and then at the bottom here, it says Open Photoshop document or
That's
Open
right.
Image.
That's right. So again, many folks will start off with a design or a comp that was created by a pure design person in Photoshop, and a lot of times they're trying to make their website match as closely as possible to that comp. And so being able to open the comp and being able to compare that comp side by side with the actual rendered web page in the browser, again, is a really handy thing for people that are creating real-world websites that started off by somebody in the design world that would use a tool like Photoshop. In addition, you can also open up any standard type of image to compare the web page rendering to an image as well.
How important do you think the pixel perfect is? Because I remember hating designers in the late 90s who would tell me that everything was fine except the shopping cart icons and pixel too far to the left. Is that what we want to? Do we really want to get people thinking about things in terms of pixel perfect?
I do think it's a slippery slope, and I think what a tool like SuperPreview is most valuable for are for the pages that have some really serious rendering difference where it actually makes information not be readable on a page. And so a lot of times that might just be a simple tweak to an outer container element or some part of the structural layout that a tool like SuperPreview can really help you find quickly and really get that problem resolved without too much effort, because you can most of the problem is around identifying the root of the root cause of the layout issue. But I agree with you. It can be a slippery slope to start trying to get pixel perfect accuracy on these designs, and I don't think that's the real high value for SuperPreview. I really think it's to make sure that the website or the web design is readable and all the information is presentable, so that you don't miss a huge part of your target audience because they happen to be running IE6.
Hi, this is Scott. I just want to remind you guys that there's no show without a sponsor. Somebody's got to pay for all this bandwidth, and the more popular the show becomes, the more important it is that we thank our sponsors, folks like Telerik. Now, I want to let you guys know that Telerik has got a pretty cool deal going between June 1st, 2010 and August 31st, 2010. Any interested listener, just send an email to podcast@Telerik, TELERIK.com, mention Hansel Minutes, and they will reply, and they'll give you a special $50 off coupon code. So just remember, podcast@Telerik.com, mention Hansel Minutes, $50 off. This goes until August 31st, 2010. And big thanks again for the folks at Telerik for believing in our show and for continuing to help pay for our expenses. So it looks like I'm hovering over one of my images here, and it turns out that recently, I think yesterday, I posted something where one of my images was too wide, and it shoved my right rail all the way down. So I figured out what my IE6 issue is while you were talking. I'm going to close IE, and then I'm going to pick Safari. And it says Remote Browser Beta, and then it has a little kind of icon indicating something's going to happen far away.
Yep. Yeah, that's a new feature that we're really excited about. The way the IE browsers and the Firefox browser works in SuperPreview is we actually communicate with the real browser on your machine to produce an image, get the DOM, and display that in SuperPreview. Obviously, to get a rendering on Safari, we could have done the same thing with Safari on a PC, but what we found is that most people were interested in how does my website look on a Mac, and so to implement that, what we did was actually we created a server farm with a bunch of Mac servers up in the cloud, and those servers respond to requests from SuperPreview and will render either a public URI like you're trying at Hanselman.com, or if you're developing a page locally, it will actually bundle up all the files required to render that page, send that up to the server. The Mac servers in the farm will render it using Safari 4, and will send back the DOM and the picture, and you can view that in SuperPreview side by side with any of the IEs or Firefox browsers that you've got locally.
Okay, so you're saying I can actually go localhost 8080 and hit refresh, and it's just going to be as if it's just not. It's going to be seamless. I'm not going to know any of that.
No, on local files, you will need to actually use the file : / URL that'll tell the SuperPreview to go ahead and bundle up all those related files and send it up. If you give it any sort of HTTP URL, it will actually go and just send that URL to the server, and that will get rendered. So if it's a local file you want to preview, you need to open it within SuperPreview with the file URL. That
would be a cool feature, though, if I could do that. If you could bring it down,
that would be. That's something we should definitely get added to our product studio list for next release or service pack.
So I'm looking at this, and it's creepy because it looks like a Mac. It's got, like, my inline scroll bars have the little Mac Chrome. So I know it's a Mac. I can see places where I had iframes and different things where this is unquestionably a Mac, and it has that Mac font style. And
That's right.
It looks like I can zoom in. Yeah, it's definitely a Mac. I can tell by the fonts. And it's just ever so subtle. It actually looks okay, so it looks like I look all right on the Mac. Now, I was poking around, and by poking around, I was trying to take this apart and figure out how it works, so I hope you don't mind. I noticed that if you go to the Help menu and you say Feedback, you say Create Feedback or Send Feedback, and then you say Create Attachment, you make a zip file, and you stick it somewhere, and it says, the Expression Web team wants customer feedback, okay? And then you have a path to this zip file. So I actually opened that zip file up because this is the file you're about to send to the team. And I started poking around in here. And this is really interesting because this is kind of where it all happens. I'm looking in this zip file, and it says browser IE7, browser IE8, remote browser. And within them is this DOM XML, and then an image, and then a bunch of settings. So you have a serialized version of the DOM, and you're actually putting XY coordinates, basically saying this element is here on this browser.
That's right.
How are you talking to each browser? Because every browser has a different way for you to potentially get this information.
That's right. So what we do is we use the publicly available APIs for the browsers. So, for example, IE exposes numerous COM APIs that allow us to ask the browser to do things for us, like render an image or to navigate to a URI. We can also say, okay, once you've navigated to a URI, give me access to the document, and basically go through each node in the document and ask it for interesting information that would help you to provide information that would help debug rendering problems. So in the examples that we have now, whether it be Firefox, IE, or Safari, we are using the APIs into those browsers that give us the ability to ask it, give us the top-level DOM node, and then we just basically iterate through all the children and stuff it into an XML document and send it back to the desktop.
So when I click on Firefox here, now I've got Firefox and Safari side by side. You're communicating with my local version of Firefox? Am I going to see Firefox if I open the Task Manager?
You will not see Firefox when you open the Task Manager. We actually, with Firefox, we actually launch a separate process that allows us to go ahead and engage with the Firefox APIs, and we only have that running for the period of the time that you are actually rendering. So if you were to start up your Task Manager and you happen to catch it just in the right spot, you might see something that's called pips pips.exe.
Right.
It's a pipe server, and so we start up this server that actually to do the rendering, so we can allow the UI to continue to be responsive while the browser's rendering in the background or in a separate process. And we send it a command, tell it to render this page or render this file, and then when it completes, it shuts it down, sends back the information through the pipe, and then we display it in the UI. So, like I said, if you want to see the thing that's actually talking to the Firefox libraries, it would be that pipe server that we start up and shut down after the rendering is complete.
So what I'm doing, because I just built a new computer, is I've added everything. So I've got 6 different things. I've got Firefox, IE 678, Safari 4, IE 8 in compatibility mode. I hit refresh, and I see Expression Web Preview Pipe Server 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then Super Preview. And this is why it's so fast, I'm realizing, on my machine, because I've got a 6-processor machine. A lot of people have quads, and you're firing off different processes. So this is a nice use of multiprocessor you're getting for free because you're using out a process for this work.
That's right.
That's pretty slick. Okay, so that's how you're talking to Firefox and Safari and using public APIs. I use Chrome a lot. Where's Chrome? And if I were going to plug in, you'll have to create a pipe server that will talk to Chrome and then use publicly available APIs to pull that information out of Chrome?
That's right. So Chrome is one thing that we currently don't support, and the reason for that at the moment is Chrome, unlike Firefox and unlike IE and unlike Safari, does not have a public API from which you can control or get information out of the browser. Now, it is based on the same rendering engine as Safari, but again, they don't provide the external APIs to actually drive the browser and get DOM information out of it. So we're currently in the process of figuring out a different way to provide rendering support for Chrome. And once we do, we're sure to make that available to Super Preview and make leverage of the current cloud environment that we've created for the Safari data generator to get that out as soon as we can to our customers.
Oh, okay. So you're going to be able to get newer browsers. Now that you've got the remote infrastructure, you could put browsers out, and I wouldn't need to even install them. That's
right. So that was why the adding the Safari support was a big step for us, because that basically opened up the portal to allow us to now, in between releases of Expression Studio, we can have the flexibility and the ability to add new browser support in the cloud before we have a chance to actually update the client. So for people that are currently using Super Preview or interested in using Super Preview, but we don't currently have the browser that you're looking for, stay tuned, because we're going to continue to work on that and increase our offering of browsers in the cloud.
Am I going to see those browsers just kind of pop in? Like one day I'll open Super Preview and there'll be another browser there?
That's right. We have what we call the Discovery service, which allows the Super Preview client to make a web service call to a service that's running in Azure, Microsoft's cloud computing environment, and that will return back to the desktop all of the available endpoints, which are the active browsers that we currently support. So as they come online, you'll see them in that remote browsers section of the Super Preview application.
That's really interesting, because that implies then that Super Preview's brains, the thing that I think of as Super Preview, the desktop application, which is all kind of pretty and has that nice black designer turtleneck kind of a thing that designers like, is really just a shell, and the smarts could be in the cloud.
That's right. So we have support for your local browsers, but we've built in the infrastructure to basically allow us to expand that set as new browsers come online, whether they be Microsoft browsers or Mozilla browsers or Apple browsers or Google browsers. We can add to those that collection and release updates to that in a much more web style. As these things come available, we can ship them and make them and increase the functionality of a desktop app by continuing to support more and more browsers.
Do you support multiple versions of Firefox? I mean, how detailed can you get? Because one of the things that these online services that send you a screenshot will do is they'll just give you just an obscene number of browsers. You know, you want to see what your site looks like on links, we'll send you a screenshot. You know, it's simplistic, but they make up for it in volume.
Right.
Do you think, are you guys going towards the volume play, or are you going to go for the top 90% of browsers, or 95%?
Yeah, our goal has really been to stay relevant and to basically keep tabs on the market and provide access to the most commonly used browsers. And if you look at most browser studies, in terms of desktop browsers, they basically a collection of, let's say, 5 to 8 of them that represent, you know, somewhere around 90% of the market. And so our goal was to really keep up to date on the most broadly used browsers and make sure that we've got those covered, and make sure that we've got, you know, advanced techniques like the DOM highlighting to make sure that within the browsers that are most commonly used around the world, that we've got great support for those.
So one of the things that Super Preview doesn't seem to have is interactivity. I can't navigate, click around. JavaScript's not firing in the sense of like hovers and things like that. Is that something that that you think you'd add? Because I've noticed a couple of things from some JavaScript and some jQuery animations that I expected to run didn't, because I'm looking at a screenshot.
Right, and that's definitely something that's on our radar. We realize that most pages today are not just static pages, and most pages today either, you know, have animations that happen on load or on some sort of user interaction. And so we're now in the phases of planning our next release and thinking about where we need to go to really, you know, continue to provide value and to continue to help people, give them the experience they need to debug the situations that they most encounter, and those are the obvious next directions for us. So we're right in the process of discussing those things, and those are things that we're taking a good look at and trying to figure out the way of best supporting them to make the application, to continue to make the application helpful and usable, because they're not trivial things to think about. So we want to make sure that we allow people to do those sorts of debugging techniques in a way that, you know, is easy to use and helps them to debug quickly, like they can today with Super Preview on static pages.
Yeah, well, once you open the floodgates and allow someone to do, you know, a mouse over, then they're going to want this and they're going to want that. I mean, are you going to give me like a complete Mac in the sky and it's going to be all dynamic and stuff? It could potentially, if you did it wrong, you could make people more angry than happy. That's right. And in addition to completely overload our servers with, you know, lots of stuff that, you know, would cause things to come crashing down. So yeah, you've got to be careful to sort of approach it smartly and to really try to figure out what are the scenarios that most people are in need of, and really, you know, try to hit those big ticket items first. It looks like we've got, I'm just looking here, Microsoft has Internet Explorer compatibility VMs, which are basically free versions of XP, and they basically refresh it every 6 months. So here they've got versions of IE 6, 7, and 8 that you can download, but they expire in October. Presumably then you can come back later and, you know, every 90 days you go and get a fresh VM. So they're doing the work of that for you. So for some kind of interactions, you can use virtual machines. Sure. Yep. That's right. What did you write Super Preview in? It's extremely fast, and it looks a lot like Blend. It's got that, like I said, that turtleneck kind of black thing that we know about as Blend UI. But the fonts are really sharp. We definitely wanted to fit in with the look and the feel of all the Expression tools, So Expression Super Preview was written using Manage Code, C#, WPF to do the UI. To do the remote pieces, we use WCF, and we approach things using REST-style web services. When we actually have to talk to the browsers, we do have to do some native code. So, for example, the APIs that the Firefox application exposes are things that we need to talk to using C++. The Safari, talking to Mac Safari, we had to write that layer using Objective-C, and that runs natively on the Mac. But the bulk of the UI and the application that you interact with, that's all using Manage Code C#. And even though I'm a Manage I'm a managed code guy. You'll forgive me if I'm a little surprised. It's extremely fast. And, managed code gets kind of a rap sometimes for being slow, particularly in the UI side. This is in WPF because it's really, all the fonts are clear. There's no blurriness. I'm doing resizing and moving stuff around, and I'm clicking around really fast in the toolbar, and it's extremely quick. Did you have to do anything special to make that so fast?
Nope, just used good WPF, standard WPF programming techniques, and that's it. In fact, the direction for all the Expression products is WPF and C#. So if you've used Blend before or you've used Expression Web before, those are all using managed code using C#.
So all of it, everything, all the entire Expression suite is in managed code?
With the exception of there's parts of the core of Web, which is actually a fairly old product that dates back to the front page days. But Encoder, Blend, SuperPreview, and then parts of Web are all written in C#.
Do you n-gen it? Do you do a native generation after installation to make it faster, or do you just let it JIT by itself?
It's just straight up.
I know. I'm like, what, really? And you're like, yeah, it's really not a big deal. No, I'm being totally straight. I've sometimes you'll use an application and they'll throw a splash screen up, or they'll do something, and in the background you can see Engine struggling to keep up. But that's really impressive that this is in WPF. Yeah, we're definitely eating our own dog food within the Expression product development group. Oh, that's cool. You guys should spread the word about some of the techniques. If there's specific techniques you're doing to make things faster, or different libraries for or tech, if there's something that's not completely obvious, we should spread the word, because it's nice to see that you can make a good-looking application that really looks like any other app, and it's written in WPF. That's cool.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We should definitely help spread the word about C# and WPF, and how you can make great-looking, performant desktop apps with it.
Well, maybe we'll do a follow-up show, and we'll talk specifically about WPF. Maybe we'll get Pete Brown on and talk about some of the things that you've enjoyed and not enjoyed about WPF itself.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
All right, well, fantastic. Thanks so much, Mike Calvo, for coming on and talking about the Expression SuperPreview.
Hey, I appreciate it, Scott. Thanks for your time.
This has been another episode of Hansel Minutes, and we'll see you again next week.